I'm really pleased to be here. It feels like been waiting a long time to actually come and see the club, even though it hasn't been that long. So looking forward to meeting a lot of the staff, getting to know my new surroundings, and it won't be too long until we really get cracking.
How do you look ahead to the challenge you've got as manager of Ipswich Town?
Very excited. I think there's a lot of good players here already. Last season it wasn't a disaster by any stretch, but I know there was a lot of injuries which had an impact maybe on the final league position. So it's not a case of coming in and ripping everything up. We'll bring some new ideas and we'll look at the best way we feel to play in terms of system, etc. But just really excited. I'm very humble and honoured to have the chance to manage this football club, and hopefully I can take the opportunity that's in front of me.
How quickly will it take you to assess what you've got? And obviously I suppose you've watched DVDs or you will do, and you'll have the lads with you in the next 2 weeks, but how quickly can you work out what you want, what you need, what you've got to play with?
I think what I'd like is quite an easy one. In terms of how the players fit into that, I think only time will tell. I've watched quite a lot of the games. That was part of the holiday, and certainly the flights out and in. But I think until you're actually working with someone, you're not quite sure. You've got a rough idea, but some players might respond better to a previous manager. Some might respond better to myself. You would envisage everyone, being really enthusiastic, giving their all for the first couple of weeks, and then after that, maybe things change slightly. So you have to give it a little bit of time, but at the same time I do believe in first impressions. And no doubt when I meet the players, I'll be keen to see how they respond to myself. Hopefully they'll see someone that's coming in that's driven, wants to succeed, and hopefully they'll want to go on that journey with us.
You're sitting here now at Portman Road for the first time, looking around. It's a big football club waiting to go, really, isn't it? I mean, you'll be aware of the history and everything else that goes with that.
Yeah, and again, I'm very proud to be the manager of a club that's got such a rich history. And I think I mentioned before, can just remember, only just, but that great side that was put together, and they had so much success, and probably the most success in the club's history. That's something to be proud of, but what unfortunately it doesn't do is get us 3 points on a Saturday. But it's nice, we've got to manage expectations, but I do want us to be really looking forward to the new season with an optimism, and let's see what we can do. I'm not going to put any sort of limits on anything. At the same time, I'm not going to come in and make any false promises until I really get to work with this group of players. Maybe add 1 or 2 if possible. Then you can maybe make a little bit of a call on that. But I think last season at my old club showed sometimes what can be achieved. I can't promise that, but it's about working hard, working together. And everyone's got to be together, including the fans. The staff, the players, I can almost promise that will happen. And we've got to try and get these fans involved as well.
You've obviously got good knowledge of the lower leagues. I know you played for Rotherham at Portman Road as well, and so you played in the Championship, but do you need to educate yourself for the Championship, or does that come from the manager anyway? I
think you have an idea, and it's important that I don't get caught up in the fact that we've gone up a level and suddenly the game changes. Yes, of course, there's different styles. More teams will pass the ball more often. Certainly, a lot of games I've watched, they tend to let teams have the ball. It's a little bit slower in some ways at times, the build-up. But a lot of my principles I want to bring to this football club. I think it'd be foolish to go away from what served me well at previous clubs. So we'll try and implement that over time on the training ground. And overall, I want us to be positive. I want us to be on the front foot. I want us to have a go. If it doesn't always work out, I'd rather come off, and maybe either pay respect to the opposition, or say that we weren't just quite good enough on the day, but we did have a go and didn't have any regrets with performances. Naturally, over the course of a season, there'll be some games, you know, we won't be happy with, but hopefully in the main we'll be happy with performance levels. If they're good, you give yourself a chance at winning games of football.
You talked about principles and you sort of suggested you're going to play on the front foot. Is that the way you see your team, the Ipswich Town team under Paul Hurst?
That's what I'm wanting. Now again, I've got to see that the players are capable of doing that. We certainly will introduce a fitness programme and, you know, the sports science that's been discussed. But ultimately the players that we have to be capable of taking on the workload that I would expect from them. Now, if they can't, that's something we'll have to look at and maybe, you know, tweak one or two things. But I'm really hopeful, especially with a lot of younger players, and that's not ruling out the older pros, because we need them as well. But in terms of the energy and the fitness, it should be there. You know, and again, watching some of the games, I've been impressed with some of it. Other bits, you know, again, it just naturally, as managers, you have slightly different ideas, or maybe the team wasn't performing how, you know, Mick wanted it at times. So, you know, but that will be right from day one. Will be the work ethic, and when it comes to doing as, you know, shape work and getting those principles across, one of it will be to try and make it very difficult when the opposition's got the ball, and obviously when we get it, I want us to try and pass the ball. That's important because possession isn't, you know, it doesn't particularly translate to winning a game, but while you've got the football, you know, the opposition can't score. So I want us to try and do that. I think we've got some very good players that will enjoy playing that way, but it's easy talking about it sat here. You know, we haven't started yet, and we'll assess, you know, the best way forward as we move on. But I have got a very clear idea of how I would like to play.
You've spoken to the owner numerous times, no doubt, and any new manager normally comes in and wants to tweak things and bring a couple of players in. Have you got a time scale from that, or do you expect to return to training and work with what you've got and then take it from there?
I think in general probably return with what we've got. I think it's one thing that maybe is slightly different. I'm not saying you can't, you know, some clubs will sign players in our league, there's no doubt about that. But with the step up, I think maybe you have to be a little bit more patient in terms of bringing players in. You know, we've got a World Cup, there's the England tournaments that are going on, so, you know, that impacts us straight away as a football club, and myself getting to know some players. It may take a little bit of time until I get to actually see them, but in terms of targets, clubs will be in similar positions, so I think it might be a bit of a slow burner, that one. In an ideal world, I'd have 4 or 5 lads in, that's the squad, I know where we're going, but it very rarely happens in football.
You talked about players got to prove themselves to you, first impressions and all that. I guess you would have to prove yourself to them as well, wouldn't you? The way you're looking at it.
I'm confident in terms of my ability and Chris's, who's obviously come in with me, but at the same time it is the highest level that we've managed at, and, you know, I've not got an ego that thinks anything other than you know, we've got to gain the players' respect as well. You're in a position where you hope that happens naturally, but again, I want to show them that, you know, we're capable, we've got the best interests at heart, and ultimately what we have got to find is a common goal, and a common goal for me is to be as successful as we can. Now, what's deemed as success, you know, will transpire over the season, you know, and I think we have to be realistic about what that can be. But at the same time, I want everyone to be ambitious and hungry to be the best that they can be as individuals and we can be as a football club.